Good morning, students. I hope you are well, taking good care of yourselves and staying safe. So here is a poster, and this is showing us some symptoms and preventions related to coronavirus and symptoms. So what are the symptoms? Symptoms means some signs, means if someone is infected from coronavirus, so how do he or she know, and how do we will know that she or he is infected? So that person who is infected from coronavirus will have fever, cough, and this is a medical term which means that difficulty in breathing. That person cannot breathe easily like we are doing, like you are doing. They cannot breathe. And then there is vomiting, diarrhea, uh, fatigue means they will feel tired, pneumonia, this is kind of fever, and then a runny nose. These are all symptoms if someone is infected from coronavirus. Now, what are the preventions? How you can stay safe? So, first and foremost, by staying at home. This is good for you, for your family, for your friends, and for everyone. Wear mask if you are going out. Wash your hands with antibacterial soap frequently. And well done cooking. Cook the things before you eat or wash them thoroughly before eating. And if you feel fever or runny nose or cough, then go to the doctor and avoid crowded places, means avoid going to parks, malls, supermarkets, avoid going out. So the best thing nowadays is to stay at home. Stay at home. So our today's session is about lesson 13.5, compare fractions by using benchmarks. And we are going to cover page number 697 to 700. So what are the objectives for today's lesson? What we are going to learn in this lesson? So we will compare fractions like we are doing in previous two lessons, but this time we are going to use benchmark numbers to compare the fractions. Now, what are the benchmarks? Most commonly used benchmarks are 0, half, and 1. Now, what are these and how we are going to use them? Let's learn. So before getting into the lesson, let's have a look. What do we already know? So we know that fractions can be compared. Okay, if denominator is same, then you will compare what? Excellent. Numerator. So how you will categorize or compare the fractions by looking at the numerator? Very good. Small numerator will represent smaller fractions and bigger numerator, very nice, will represent bigger fractions. Very good. And then if the numerator is same, then you have to compare what? Excellent, by denominators. So how you are going to compare using denominator? Very nice. Small denominator will represent the greater fraction and great denominator will represent excellent smaller fractions. So this is what we have done in last two lessons. We compared fractions using numerator and denominator. In this lesson, we are going to learn about comparing the fractions using benchmark. benchmarks using benchmarks. Now, what are the benchmarks and how can we use them while comparing the fractions? For that, you have to watch this video. Watch it very carefully, and you are going to tell me at the end of this video that what did you learn, how to use benchmarks.
How can benchmark numbers be used to compare fractions? Think about this question during the lesson. Carrie wants to buy 2/6 of a container of roasted peanuts. Alan wants to buy 2/3 of a container from a same-sized container of roasted peanuts. Who will buy more peanuts? What are you asked to determine? What is important to know before you compare fractions? You are asked to determine the person who will buy more peanuts. Before you compare fractions, it is important to know that the wholes are the same size. You can compare fractions to commonly used benchmark numbers, such as 0, 1/2, and 1. Compare each fraction to the benchmark number 1/2. Then see how they relate to each other in size. 2/6 is less than 1/2. 2/3 is greater than 1/2. Without looking at the containers, how can you tell that 2/6 is less than 2/3? You can tell that 2/6 is less than 2/3 because the numerators are the same, and you can compare the denominators. The fraction with the greater denominator is less than the other fraction. What is the missing symbol?
Select your answer.
Two-sixths is less than 2/3.
Remember, 2/6 and 1/3 are equivalent fractions.
Alan will buy more peanuts than Carrie. Now you know how benchmark numbers can be used to compare fractions.
Okay, so what did you learn from the video, students? Excellent. You learned about some very popular or commonly used benchmarks. So what are those? Very good. 0, 1/2, and 1. Excellent. So you are going to use these benchmarks for excellent comparing the fractions. Very good. Okay, so let's begin our lesson. Lesson 13.5, page number 697. What is the problem given? Mr. Evans wrote these fractions on the board. Then he circled the fractions that are closer to 0 than to 1. Which fraction did he circle and which fraction did he not circle? Solve this problem any way you choose and explain how you decide. Okay, so if we look at the fractions given in the question, we can clearly see that the numerator is starting from 1 and it is increasing part by part. 1, then we have 2, then we have 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. and the new denominator is 8. So after 7 we will have 8 of 8. So when numerator and denominator are same, that is equal to excellent 1. Okay, so what we will do, we will divide this whole from 0 to 1, and we have used the benchmark 1/2, 0 and 1. Now we will divide it further into 8 equal parts. Why 8 parts? Because the fractions given in our question has 8 as a denominator. Okay, so we will divide it into 8 equal parts, 4 parts on this side of half and 4 parts on this side. Now then we will write the fraction for each part. So quickly tell me, what will be the fraction for first part? Excellent, 1/8. For second part, very nice, 2/8. For third part, bravo, 3/8, and so on. So it will be something like this. I divided it into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. 8 equal parts, and I have written fractions for all the parts. Right? Now the question was, he circled the fraction that are closer to 0. So which fractions are closer to 0? Excellent. On the left side of the half, all the fractions are closer to 0, while on the other side of the half, these fractions are closer to 1, and these fractions are closer to, the circled ones are closer to 0. So for further problems on the next page, just keep one thing in your mind, that the fractions with smaller numerator, will be closer to 1, will be closer to 0. The fractions with smaller numerator will be closer to 0, and as the numerator will get bigger, it will be closer to 1. Very good. Okay, on next page, question 1. Tina used benchmark numbers to decide that 3/8 is less than 7/8. Do you agree? Okay, so using benchmarks, or just keep one thing in your mind, a tip, a small clue. When the denominators are same, we compare by looking at the excellent numerator, and smaller numerator represents, very good, smaller fractions. So yes, according to that, 3/8 is less than 7/8, and we agree. Okay, question 2. Write two fractions with a denominator of 6 that are closer to 0 than to 1. So we have to represent or write two fractions. The denominator is going to be 6 and the fractions should be closer to 0. So we just decided on last page that the fractions with, very good, smaller numerator will be excellent, closer to 0, sorry. So 1/6 will be closer to 0 because it is related to the first part, and I can also write 2/6. These are closer to 0, but as the denominator will keep on getting big, it will be closer to excellent 1. Question 3. Write two fractions with denominator of 8 that are closer to 1 than to 0. So for this, you have to go to the last page and you have to look for the fractions that are closer to 1, which Mr. Avon has not circled, and write them here. Okay, for question 4, 5, 6, 4 fractions are given in the question. 1/8, 1/4, 6/8, and 3/4. Okay, which fractions are closer to 0? So we just did in this question that the fractions with excellent smaller numerator will be closer to 0. So look at these fractions. Which one has smaller numerator? Excellent. 1/8 and 1/4 are closer to 0. Question 5. Which fractions are closer to 1? So you have to write it yourself. You can see that these fractions with smaller numerator are closer to 0. So which fraction will be closer to 1? Excellent. Write them here. Very good. Use the two fractions with denominator of 8 to write a true statement. So with denominator of 8, we have 6/8 and we have 1/8. So if the denominator are same, by looking at the numerator, which one is bigger? Excellent. Bigger numerator will give bigger fraction. Very nice. Okay, so from question 7 to question 14, you have to do it yourself. You have to just compare the fractions and you have to write the fractions which is close to 0 or closer to 1. And here you will compare the fractions by looking at the numerator or the denominator. So just pause this video right here, quickly finish comparing the fractions, and then we will go to the next page. Okay, so I hope you are done with your comparison, and I hope your answers are same like mine. If not so, you can correct your answer and you can ask me for help anytime if you are confused about any question. Okay, so now you have the assessment for this lesson, and here the two boxes are given, closer to 0 and here closer to 1, and some fractions are given below. So you have to choose the fractions and write them in the right box, in the correct box. Okay, so that's all for today's lesson. Your homework is assigned on Pearson Online, so just log into your Pearson account to do your homework. I will see you in the next video with a new lesson. Till then, take care and stay safe.